Hey everybody, this is Chris, MTGO's Rec Start, and we're back for part 2, and we are looking at a match here from the Tribal Apocalypse Player Run event from this past week, and this was the Commander Tribal event, and I'm going to go ahead and set the stage here for this one. Kumagoro sent this in. He was playing Doran Treefolk. Coconade 1000 was playing Odric Soldiers. Sekawar Deathkeeper was playing Reaper King, Scarecrow build, and Coyote 420 was playing Sig, River Cutthroat as rogues, not merfolk. So, the first few minutes of the match, everyone was sort of just developing their board. And let's take a look at what's going on here. Kumagoro is got Doran out and is threatening to start beating in with him, and we're going to see some sort of opening exchange here. The Chameleon Colossus is holding off Doran. I would normally think, looking at this board, there's some things if you play multiplayer Commander. The fact that Sekawar Deathkeeper has foiled out deck over here would probably tell me that he's a Commander vet, and normally, although again, the Scarecrow tribe proved to need a lot of supplementing with shapeshifters and things here. Normally, this would be a very, you would expect this deck to be the power deck, and I would want to be putting a little pressure on it, and apparently Coconade 1000 with his Odric Soldiers has been nibbling at Sekawar Deathkeeper during the first few minutes with an Aven Squire, which later in the game Sekawar Deathkeeper is going to hold against Coconade and take him out, even though Coconade's board is probably the least threatening of all of them, and he ends up being taken out, which we'll see later. But it sort of highlights one of the problems with playing, and again, there's obviously some budget constraints here. He says as much in the chat, but playing an aggressive deck in multiplayer, you have to come out and attack, and you have to pick somebody to attack, and whoever you pick to attack is going to start to view you as an enemy disproportionate to your actual threat and how good your board looks in the late game, and suddenly you're going to start getting some hate come back on you. And so if you're not brutally efficient at closing out the game, then you have really just bought yourself some political trouble there by playing that style of deck. And again, I think that's one of the problems with it. But we'll see here that Kumagoro is going to go ahead and smash in with Doran, and Coyote 420 has got the first piece of spot removal and fires it off at Doran and is able to take care of this early volley, and Kumagoro then has to start redeveloping his board. Nothing particularly interesting happens again until we get to about 645 here. What you're going to see is that Sekawar Deathkeeper is still just very slowly developing his mana, not doing anything too threatening to this point. He's been beaten down all the way down to 24 at this point, and at some point he's going to have to start making his move. But he's playing it pretty cool on the political angle, and Kumagoro is starting to develop what looks to be the dominant board here, although Coyote is in a little trouble on life, but does have a decent board here with Sig and a couple of evasive guys here. Coconade is got some more weenies, but is just continuing to sort of pop in with the Aven Squire and not do too much more than that. And if we go ahead about a minute to right around here, we're going to see that Kumagoro is getting ready to make an attack. And because Odric is out on the field, Kumagoro makes a comment to the effect that he was attacking to prevent Odric from doing any sort of shenanigans. I don't know if he's trying to get Coyote to believe that to see him as less threatening, that he was only doing that because of that. I guess that's why he can't attack into Odric. That part of that makes sense, but there might be just a little bit of politicking going on there at this point from Kuma. We're going to go ahead to about here. And you can see here that Sekuar Deathkeeper has brought Reaper King out, and he's used his first Scarecrow to pop Odric, and he basically then beats in at Coconade, and in the chat justifies it basically on the basis that the Aven Squire was pelting him repeatedly through the early part of the game, which again just sort of proves the pitfall here. I don't think, looking at this board, that now Odric can be a threat for an Alpha Strike when you start getting to these low life totals like that, so you can't totally ignore him over here, but this is hardly the most dominating board position I've ever seen, and Coconade looks like a lot less of a threat than the other players at this point, and so beating him, you know, whether or not that was optimal or not, certainly you can say that Coconade maybe poked the bear a little bit by beating him in and nibbling on him early with this Aven Squire. So again, sort of one of the pitfalls of playing this type of deck in multiplayer Commander, and why these aggressive decks are a little less viable in multiplayer, because as you can see, he was able to do a little bit of work, but not enough to keep Sekuar from getting the time he needed to start bringing out the heavy guns. So now we're going to take a look at, advance a little further in the game here, and Kumagoro is going to get in on the action, and he swings in at Coconade also in his turn, which I'm sorry I just missed. But Kumagoro also mentions in the text around this point that Coconade had been picking a fight early, and that was a justification for swinging in on him, which again, Coconade doesn't seem like the threat to take over the game here, and yet he's drawing a lot of fire just because he beat in with an Aven Squire on the first several turns. We're going to go ahead and jump all the way ahead here to, let's see, you can find it. We'll start right about here at the 1340 mark of the replay. Sekuar Deathkeeper is getting ready here. He's been able to use his Reaper King, which nobody's had removal for, to start picking off some of Coconade's creatures, and now he's going to swing in and go ahead and knock him out at this point, and he's going to follow up knocking out Coconade with a board wipe, which is going to be a nice little game reset here. So we're down to 3 players at roughly even life totals, but the fortunes are going to change very quickly here, because what we are going to see is that at about the 15-minute mark of this replay, Kumagoro is going to have deployed an Avenger of Zendikar, which he then is able to follow up with a Cultivate, Kodama's Reach in this case, and suddenly has a pretty impressive army of plant tokens here, and that is going to be able to finish him off the game as we go to the 1630 mark. Kumagoro is able to recast Doran and swing in with all of his plant army, and is going to take the game here. We're also going to see that one of the limitations Sekuar Deathkeeper obviously had with the Scarecrow deck was that the Scarecrows just don't run very deep, and he had to play some Changelings of questionable value, and again we see that part of the deck construction for this format is going to be, while you can certainly at liberty to pick commanders that give you a lot of flexibility in your support slots, as Reaper King does, and he's a good solid commander in general EDH, but obviously again I was certainly overestimating the ability of people to work around this limitation. I think people are still maybe there's a balance there between what kind of commander you pick and the tribe that you're stuck with in order to justify those sports slots. Because Kumagoro's experience, as he mentioned a few times in correspondence with me, was just that it was, he'd had hand after hand where he drew nothing but, his on-tribe guys and nothing else. And I mean, that's an enormous segment of what your deck is. And so it may very well be that it's harder to overcome a weak tribe with support cards in Commander Tribal than it is in Legacy Tribal Wars in general. And that's if we see further Commander Tribal events, that's something I expect to see be the case going forward. And some of the popular commanders in wider Commander are not going to have an easy time being ported over into Commander Tribal if it becomes a semi-regular event. So, anyways, that's the recap there. The takeaway here from this, I think, is certainly a guy like Doran. If you're going to get aggressive, you want it to be with your commander, because at least then you're only having to do 21 points of damage to somebody instead of 40. And otherwise, if you're getting aggressive, you're not necessarily going to have the long game. And if you're going to build an aggressive deck, try to build some kind of long game in, some bombs, some haymakers, or something like that. Because if all you do is some little ticky-tack attacks in the early stages and it's not enough to finish somebody off, then that person is just going to be, take out their revenge on you, and you're not going to have a deck that's capable of dealing with that. And I think that there probably are some ways to do that on a budget. You simply have to have a little bit more cognizance of what multiplayer Commander is going to be like. Realize that at least you're not going to be able to just swarm the board and take it over and win before somebody's able to do something like an Avenger of Zendikar play, which just is game ending. So anyways, that's all for this week, and I will see you next week when we're back to an underdog week. So regular tribal, but with the underdog tribes.